Hello viewers, and welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Live Conversations. This program is brought to you by the Contact Center Association of Zimbabwe in a bid to promote service excellence, practical service delivery, as well as customer experience. And as usual, we bring in different guests in the studio to discuss more of these issues. But today, we're going to be talking about customer experience, but in a different way. So today, we're going to be talking about consumer protection in Zimbabwe. And to discuss more of these, I am joined by Dr Mthokozisi Nkosi, who is the chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission. I'm your host, Caro Konje. Dr Nkosi, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Caro. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, viewers.
How is it at the commission?
No, we actually excited. You know, it's a new baby in the economy. The issue of consumer protection, it's something that we've been waiting for quite some time. So 2019 was obviously a watershed for us. And today we're here to talk about consumer protection. Yes.
Okay. Let's just get into it. In your view, what is customer experience?
Well, customer experience, very interesting because it's an area that also looks at the welfare of the consumer. And I think there's the word consumer, the word customer. At times, the two are actually used interchangeably. But maybe I might want to start from there. Customer experience, the customer. What is a customer? A customer is that person who, purchases for purposes of either consumption or on someone's behalf. But it's a word that I really like, defining customer, what a customer is, obviously, before getting to the customer experience. The customer is that person who require your service, your product, your idea, assistance, anytime, anywhere, to satisfy a need or a want. It's a very interesting explanation or definition of a customer, but technically that's what it means. A customer is everywhere. A customer, that person who needs your service, your product, assistance, idea, help, anywhere, anytime. We've got customers at home, you've got a customer at the office, you've got a customer in the road, wherever we are, there's a customer. Now, we always say customer is better understood in the context of who. Right? If you are a person with Ubuntu values, you are someone who is caring, you are someone who is responsible, you are someone who is honest, you are someone who knows how to, live in a harmonious, way with others. Right? So when you have got customer experience, you are now saying, each time I interact with a service provider, each time I interact with someone, what is it that they leave, the impressions that they give me? Is it pleasurable or unpleasant? And generally speaking, with your customer experience, is that take-home story. What did I experience? If I'm asked how did things go, what will I say? You've been to the shops, you went to buy a loaf of bread, yes, you are back. How did it go? Gee, those guys were rude. Gee, those guys. You don't talk about, yes, I got the loaf of bread. You talk about the experience. So customer experience has got all to do with what people can take home as, what they can tell others. And series of, I would say, pleasant experiences will result in what we call customer engagement. You then become emotionally attached to a brand. So that's customer experience, at times confused with customer service, because customer service generally is the art of being given what you have asked for. Please, can I have a loaf of bread? I give you my dollar, you give me the bread. That's service. And then the experience is the packaging of that service. How was it done? Were you given the bread in a manner that would make you want to go back to that shop? Or the way things happened, you're not comfortable? So that's customer experience, and then the service is that art of actually, serving you.
We are discussing consumer protection in Zimbabwe. So who is a consumer?
Right. A consumer is that person who purchases a product or a service for purposes of consumption, right? That person who ultimately consumes, that person who ultimately uses the service or the product, that's a consumer. It doesn't matter, you know, where you're actually getting this from. Private sector, public sector, across sectors. That person who actually purchases with the intention of consuming, that's a consumer. Again, it's tempting to go back to the word customer, because consumer consumes. Yes, in the literature of consumer protection, it looks at it as one, but a customer might not necessarily consume. Like, for example, you might buy a toy for your son. You are the customer, but you might not be the consumer. The consumer becomes your son, but you are the customer. But in the context of consumer protection, yes, the temptation to actually use the same to mean the same is very high. Yeah.
Okay, is there a difference between customer experience and consumer protection? And as well, maybe you can elaborate what consumer protection is. You've just defined the word consumer. Then there's another word, consumer protection. What is it?
All right. Okay. Yeah. If you are to look at customer service, customer experience, and consumer protection, yes, there is a technical difference. Though both, I like it. They have got something to do with the welfare of the consumer, of the customer. But the way they approach is different. When you're looking at customer service, customer experience, generally it's about doing good. It's about what society looks at and views as morally correct, right? I actually come to your shop. What is morally correct is for you to greet me with a smile, offer me a seat, make me feel welcome, make me feel I'm special, I'm valued, do good. In turn, I'll also return the favor. Morally related issues, that's what customer service, customer experience is all about. Now, when you're looking at consumer protection, these are now measures. And when I'm talking of measures, I'm looking at laws, it could be policies, it could be regulations that are put in place to protect the consumer. Our consumers, on a daily basis, they are subjected to a number of ills, if you like. And what then happens is, I think it takes us back to the United Nations, whereby if you're a member state, every member state has government. You know, there's what they call United Nations guidelines on consumer protection, whereby if you're a member state, you are supposed to really abide by those and respect them. Consumers ought to be protected. Why? Because of the behavior of our entities. The assumption is normally when you see anything, it's advertised correctly, it's made correctly, it's going to do what I've been asked or told it will do. But the reality is there's so much which is behind, and hence consumer protection laws, policies, regulations are designed to punish if you go outside what is expected. I'll just give you a scenario whereby the selling of expired products, right? It ceases to be a customer service issue because people's health, in particular the consumer's health, is at risk. And the government or governments have got a responsibility to ensure that consumers are protected, safe product. So if you seem to be selling goods that have expired, the law will come very hard on you. Whereas in customer service, yes, you know, the moral suasion type of action addressing that. But in consumer protection, you go against the law, you'll be punished. You pay a heavy fine, or you actually have to go to jail. So that's the difference. Protection, you can't go outside. With customer service, customer experience, yes, these are ethical, moral issues which at times they differ from one geographic setting to another. Society, what we agree to be morally right might not be what. But when you're looking at protection, the laws governing a country it becomes one piece of legislation. And even as you go into our own environment, we now have a Consumer Protection Act, and in addition, we are not operating as an island. We are also part of the SADC region, to an extent that we've just had some engagement with the Competition Commission, which obviously look at these things from a regional perspective, because there's a lot of cross-border movement in terms of goods and services. So we would want a law that at the end of the day looks at the region as one thing. We don't want maybe some discrete type of legislation which is not talking to each other.
Okay. For the sake of our viewers, what are the laws that guides the consumers, and what steps can one take? Maybe a consumer has been deprived of his or her rights. What steps can they take? Do they know where to report to, what to do?
Right.
Maybe you can illustrate.
Yes, I think I would say we have got quite a number of areas, okay, where people can actually go. But maybe in terms of the law, the Consumer Protection Act itself, it's now more like the umbrella law, right? A law that should look at each sector. But how it works is this: every customer or every consumer becomes the Consumer Protection Commission's customer, right? But how we work now, we work with other regulatory authorities, regulatory bodies. What I'm talking about is that the economy is made up of various sectors. There are customers or consumers in the banking sector, consumers in the energy sector, consumers in the insurance sector, consumers, across sectors. So how it works is this: let's say you feel you have been hard done, maybe in a retail environment, right? We always say the first port of call is to exhaust the internal, setup. In other words, I'm not happy with what the till operator has done to me. Who is your supervisor? Who is your manager? You take your issue there. In the event that you're not getting any joy, this is where, if you've got our numbers as a commission, you talk to us direct. You've got consumer advocacy group, like in this particular case, we still have the CCAZ, Consumer Council of Zimbabwe, which is very much one of our consumer advocates. You can actually take your issue there. But ultimately, we're actually saying there's no issue which a consumer will report to us that will not be addressed. You go to the banking sector as an example. I think it's an area that majority of Zimbabwean consumers are not aware that that area, as the banking public, you've got rights, right? Rights which are very clear. In effect, we work very closely with the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, which is the regulator in that particular area. They even have what they call Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Consumer Protection Framework, which is very clear to say at the board level, what do we expect the regulated entity or the bank to do? At senior management, what do we expect? It's even expected that each bank should have what we call consumer protection champions, right? Each bank should have that, to an extent that each time you are banking, you feel you are not happy, those people should be readily available. And like they have got what they call consumer handling, procedures, which are very clear. Yes, it's not enough to display, but because like we've got a statutory instrument that compels each bank to have this in their banking halls. But they should actually go a step further by explaining these things, because we also did some surveys in the banking sector just to check whether people are aware that they've got rights. Majority, they don't know. I'll just give you a scenario. When you open your bank account, there's a procedure to say banks should take a bit of time with you, the consumer, explaining the issue of opening an account, the ins and outs, what are your rights, what are your obligations. There's so much that is involved, which most banks, they don't actually say these things to the banking public. I think the flip side has also been to say when one opens an account, they actually celebrate. Why they celebrate, we don't know, because I think maybe it's the nature of the business. But there's a lot that the consuming public should actually, the banking public should actually know about how these banks operate. It's just one scenario where I'm trying to respond to that question to say we work closely with the various, I would say, regulatory authorities in each particular sector. So you're not happy when you are subjected to some abuse by a service provider. Maybe at the end of the program, we'll just give you my number. You can actually contact me direct, but we work with other various organs so that we want the marketplace to be pleasurable, to both the consumer and the business, because we know if a consumer is happy, they're encouraged to buy more. If a consumer is happy, they're actually going to refer you, as a service provider to others. They're happy with you. That's how you make profits. That's how you grow. And we don't want you to die as a business, because when you die, you deprive us of constant supply of goods and services. Our quality of life will actually deteriorate. So at the end of it, we would need each other. The consumer must be there for the business to flourish, and vice versa. And maybe one thing that is equally important, we also demand consumers who demand value for money. I think as a country, we are where we are because of a consumer that I would, brand very much compliant. I don't want to use the word docile, but I want a consumer who demand their rights, who exercise their rights, who question and not take things at face value. Because what I've actually seen, or what we've experienced as a commission, whatever is given to the consumer, they religiously accept without questioning. And it's not doing that business a service. You are not doing a country a service. You want to constantly, interrogate the behavior of your service providers so that they constantly also look at themselves and say, is this the best way of doing something? Don't we have some inefficiencies that at the end of the day will make us quality uncompetitive, will make us price uncompetitive? Because at the end of the day, at a country level, we will not get anywhere if we've got a customer, a consumer who always take what they're given at face value.
Okay, Dr. Nkosi, you also get complaints from consumers. Maybe they faced a problem with the service provider. What is hurting consumers on a daily basis? Using Zimbabwe as a case study, because we're talking of consumer protection in Zimbabwe.
Right.
What do you think is hating them, and what can be done?
Right. I think at most the hidden costs. Right. It's an issue which is at the maybe top of the list. You get something, you are not told in advance fully the issues surrounding what you've actually purchased. So we've got a lot of complaints to say there are costs hidden which are actually not said. You also have the policies that we've got in the country. Possibly with the coming in of the act now, things are going to take a twist. But what has been happening is that most organizations, they were very much half-hearted in terms of protecting the consumer for some very strange reason. But all we need our policies to be very much comprehensive in addressing customer issues. In other instances, this is where businesses, they've actually come up with some disclaimer clauses, no return, no warranty, no exchange. All these, if you look at the act today, it has made these things illegal. Wherever you see this being displayed, it's illegal. Section 42 of our Consumer Protection Act make it a punishable offense that you actually see. It's something that again in the background, what has been happening is that we've been coming up with a schedule of fines. We're almost ready, and I think maybe taking this opportunity just to warn those with disclaimer clauses displayed in their supermarkets, goods, left at owner's risk. You also see this, you park at your owner's risk. All these are illegal, and I think I can say with authority today that you should start removing these disclaimer clauses. You want more information, come to the commission. We can actually tell you why they're actually legal. But they're very much illegal, because if you say park at your owner's risk, I'm going into your shop, surely do you want me to take my car into the shop. Leave your bags at your owner's risk. Do you want me to carry my suitcase in there? You also have your security personnel who then subject us, the searches. You want me to open the whole suitcase for everyone to see? So I think our consumers have been subjected to abuse for quite some time, and I think it's time we're saying let's have or put a stop to that. And I think businesses be warned, let's do the right things. The idea is not to punish anyone, just to say let's be fair. You need the consumer so that you grow as a business, and the consumer will also want you, for constant supply of goods and services. But let's have a fair game, and when we do that, everyone will be happy. And I think as an economy, we can also smile and possibly stop crying about I think one of the issues that is always talked about is spiraling of prices. I know people also talk of the exchange rate, all these kind of things. I think what the economy requires at this stage is constant supply of goods and services. I'm coming from a ministry that is responsible for industry and commerce, and I think this is an area where we are actually saying that our ministry is responsible for obviously creating that enabling environment. If businesses, some concerned people are not happy with certain things, maybe there are barriers to entry, I think you can actually come in and lobby. But what we would want is obviously that constant supply of services, so that when there's a lot of these available, it will actually push the prices down, and I think everyone can actually afford, and we have maybe an improved quality of life.
This is the Live Conversations, brought to you by the Contact Center Association of Zimbabwe, which is the leading voice in advocating for great customer experience. And like I said during the start of the program, that today I'm joined by Dr Mthokozisi Nkosi, who is the chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission. And today we are discussing consumer protection in Zimbabwe. Dr Nkosi, what is the importance of consumer protection to any economy?
Well, consumer protection is very important. If you look at economies outside or maybe bordering us, you can actually see that maybe over the past couple of years, 5-10 years, they've actually moved into gear. They've actually maybe developed faster in terms of economic growth than possibly ourselves. And I think it's an area that, coming from a consumer lobby group, we've always advocated for this particular act, because the importance of this particular act is that you give confidence to your consumers. And when you give confidence to your consumers, they are not afraid to point out where they feel there's something wrong, right? And each time they do that, it's actually giving what you like impetus. You are giving to the businesses, reason to constantly interrogate how they do their things, right? Most economies that are doing well, most economies that have actually developed, they've also used the consumer as a competitive weapon. They've used a consumer, someone who, because mind you, if you look at the consumer of today, they've become global consumers. Today they're in Zambia, maybe they're in Harare, tomorrow they're in Lusaka, the next day they're in Dundee, the next day they're in Tokyo, they're in California. They're experiencing what is going on, and they've seen what is happening maybe in Dundee, UK. They want the same here. And if you are going to have a consumer who is given freedom to air out their views, they are the necessary ingredient to make sure that businesses will flourish. And when that happens at a unit level, at your own level, your sector will also do well, and ultimately the economy. So it's something that if you look at down south, if you look at maybe up north, Zambia, and most of these economies that are doing well, one of the secret areas has been the area of consumer protection. And I think business ought to really understand that sources of competitive advantage, one of it comes from there. There's never a time when you say, I'm done in terms of getting advice. Your consumer becomes the most important. In other areas, maybe we have always advocated that as service providers, before you knock, for the day, you always want to check with your people, with your employees. How did the customers react today in terms of our services? What did they complain about the services? And don't accept a situation where someone will tell you that, no, consumers are very happy, customers are very happy with us. No. Customers will always complain. And each time they do, that's free advice. Advice that at times people spend millions of dollars engaging, service providers. Can you do a customer satisfaction survey for us? What for? When every day consumers are telling you how you are behaving. So in a way, you need a consumer who is confident, and they can only be confident when there is a law, a protection framework that encourages them to do that. And when that happens, then the business and the economy will actually enjoy from there.
Okay, the Consumer Protection Commission was appointed last year, around March, 2021, by the government. What are the achievements that you can say you've made so far since the inception? And we are also aware that there is no secretariat as yet, but I know maybe it is a work in progress. What can you say are the major achievements that you've done as a protection commission at the moment?
Right. I think I would really say what we have done, we've been working behind the scenes with the regulatory authorities. I think some people have actually seen what other regulators have been doing. We might not have come out in the open because, like you've rightly pointed out, we don't have a secretariat as yet. So the best way to the market is to engage the regulators, whereby we make use of them to actually implement what's in the act. It's not enough. I think in the next week or so, we're going to have what we call a stakeholders meeting or conference, where all the regulators, we are going to have them in one, I would say, room, to make sure that whatever has been happening in the past, now that we've got an act, the regulations that they have got and the act should actually be saying one thing, right? Because it's like the consumer is one, but now that we have got this thing, we should then make it more harmonious in the way we will look at the consumer. That's one thing that we have done to say, okay, we've been really working, but behind the scenes, because making noise when you are still to put your house in order, but we have been doing that through the regulatory authorities. Secondly, we're actually working with the Judicial Services Commission. We're coming up with what we call specialized consumer courts. The idea behind this course is that consumers on a daily basis, yes, they're actually facing a number of challenges, but it's scary. If I've got an issue, maybe you've got this large retail chain, this large, organization, this is what they've done to me. Do I stand a chance, if I'm going to take these guys to courts? Generally, the temptation is maybe you don't have a chance. So what we actually do, we're coming up with what we would call consumer-friendly, I would say, courts. If you don't have maybe the courage to stand in courts, we're coming up with what we call consumer protection officers. These are actually employees of the commission. You actually say out your story, they then represent you, in the courts of laws. But the whole idea is, yes, it's all work in progress. There are things that we are doing, in the background. But what is important is, yes, the secretariat takes a bit of time, but we are not saying we should stop, waiting for these guys, so that when they come, half the job, it's done. And we're quite hopeful that the powers that be, they are also working around the clock to ensure that we have got the team that we want. So it's an area coming up with these, I would say, specialized courts, working with the regulatory authorities, and also coming up with regulations. We are also coming up with what we call sectorial based regulations, sectorial based, fine schedules, right? Because what we actually say, maybe you are in the retail sector, you have got these disclaimer clauses. What fine are we going to impose? You are doing conditional selling, which is legal. What fine can be imposed? So each sector has got unique operations, and it also demands, if you like, separate fine schedules. So again, that we're actually doing. First quarter this year, all these things should now come out in the open, and consumers who are going to they are going to really enjoy it. But that's not to say wait until it's there. If you've got an issue today which is burning, you feel we've done this, yes, to a number of other consumers out there. You've got a burning issue that is pressing, you want something done, we are actually available to correct the wrong that you have gone through.
Okay, Commissioner, as we come to an end, what is your advice to the consumers?
Right, I think to the consumers out there, we would want you to be very well informed. Yes, there are going to be some awareness campaigns coming through. Again, what is going to happen is that as soon as our secretariat is in place, there's going to be a lot of promotional campaigns that we are going to see. But we want a consumer who is very much aware of their rights, a consumer who exercise those rights, a consumer who demand value for money at all times, a consumer who does not take at face value what they are told. A consumer who is constantly asking for quality checks, certification, a consumer who is well informed. And I think when we've got such kind of a consumer, this is the only way that the economy can actually grow. We advocate a situation where Zimbabwe used to be the jewel of Africa, and I think from a Consumer Protection Commission perspective, we would want those glory days to come back via an informed and well-respected consumer.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nkosi, for joining us to the program today.
You're most welcome.
It was very informative.
Thank you.
All right. This is the Live Conversations, and we have come to an end of the program. And today I was with Dr. Nkosi, who is the chairman of the Consumer Protection Commission, and we were discussing consumer protection in Zimbabwe. And as you have heard from him, please, consumers, be aware and be informed of your rights. Exercise your rights at all costs. This is the Live Conversations. I'll see you next week with more insightful topics. I'm your host, Caro Konje. Goodbye.